All right, so we're getting into Halflings now. So I wanted to ask you guys, what is the luckiest moment of your life? Grab dice. I want to hear.
I got dice. That's an 18 for me.
I got a 7 going last. All right, Brad, you're up first.
All right. Are you guys ready to get sappy?
Oh, shit.
Oh, here we go.
I know.
Is it your wife?
It genuinely is, but it's not going to be, oh, I'm so lucky that I have my wife. But generally the fact that we met is just pure luck. We met through mutual friends that we only had one chance that this was ever going to happen. And we both appeared at the same party that neither of us actually were planning on going to, but at the last minute we both decided to go, and we met. And I genuinely believe that's Mary Wings, and she was a fairy.
So, let me get this straight. She went as a fairy princess, you flashed her, and then now you're married?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Megan?
There's something there.
What's your luckiest?
I actually wrote down my partner too, unfortunately.
God,
But I wrote down 2 different things, so I'll go real quick. So the thing about my partner and I, we actually randomly met through ICQ.
I forgot that even existed.
Back when there was no security measures for online nonsense, there was a random meet person button.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. I love that.
We met randomly clicking that button back when we were 12 or 13 years old. So, parents, good job. But then the other one I actually wrote down, I was thinking about the D&D group, you guys, was actually a very lucky moment for me because not a lot of people know that, but I was going through a real shit time when I started playing D&D with you guys.
I remember you mentioning that you were in the middle of moving and it wasn't going well. And then we all, at the time, were like, we'll help you move. Like the first time we met you.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, leave me alone.
Yeah, get out of here. I don't need your kindness.
Never trust a kind stranger.
Yeah, but no, it actually changed things a lot for me that year. It put a lot of different things in a lot of different directions, and I met a lot of people that I care a lot about now. So it was a good changing moment in my adulthood, I think.
No, that's good. I had originally was going to talk about the beginning of the podcast, which is just pure stroke of freaking luck that happened at all. But because you guys brought up the partners, I met Mieka randomly. I happened to check a message board moments after she'd posted. And we were on a writing forum. And so she was looking for someone to talk to about writing. And I'm like... And I saw this question, I could answer that, but that's long-winded. I'm not going to get into it. And so I didn't. And then 2 days later, I hop in again and I see the same username pop up with the same question. I'm like, oh, that's shitty. Did nobody answer? That's kind of balls. But I was at work. And so I'm like, all right, I'll do this when I get home. And I never did. And then a week after that, I saw the third one and it was the same question again. And I'm like, everybody here sucks. And I know that it's a long, in-depth answer, but I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do this. So I did. And every time that I had looked, she was the most recent post on the forum, which never happens. That should get cycled through so quickly. So that was just pure luck. But my real answer is for the podcast. I hadn't seen Dan in 8 years, and he happened to be behind me at the Tim Hortons drive-thru, and he laid on the horn, and I sent him a text message, and we ended up, all right, well, we're gonna go for a coffee. So I sent him a coffee knowing that I was losing 2 people out of my D&D group, and Dan plays D&D. So I was talking to him about it. He's like, it sounds like a lot of fun. I'm like, why don't you come join? And then if you like it, if you're a good fit with the people that are left, and Terry was one of them. And then, so we were looking for this 4th person who ended up being Megan after that, right?
Boom.
Wow.
So,
double luck.
But, so Dan joined, and we were sitting there talking for about, 4 or 5 weeks about this, and we finally turned to each other and said, we should do a podcast. We were carpooling. I'm like, he said, we should do a podcast. I'm like, yeah, I've kind of been thinking about that. I'm kind of stoked about it. Let's talk about it after D&D. So we got there, we played 10 hours of D&D, we turn around, we walk out, and as we're leaving, Terry's like, hey guys, do you want to do a podcast? That same freaking day, and I'm like, it's fate, we got to do it now.
Yeah.
And then it took us 8 months to get our act in order.
But here you are, what is this, episode 89?
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah. And that's just the standard podcast, not to count everything else.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so
I'm going to say, though, in a year we need to check back, because you'll probably be divorced. I will probably not be with my partner, and Mieka will not make it to Canada.
Yeah, no.
We've now said too many good things. The world is going to come crashing down.
I think the United States is already on fire, and it's just going to move east from California. So
I'm a positive person, I promise.
Clearly.
Speaking of displaced people, let's talk about halflings.
Yay!
Hey!
Welcome to another episode in our conversation about the playable races in D&D 5th edition. I'm Adam, and with me this week are Brad and Megan, and this episode is called Halflings, enjoying a half pint of light stout.
Ooh. Oh.
So cute, right? God damn it, Adam.
I changed it on the way here.
And I love that so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, the original one was 50% lings.
It was fine, but this is better.
Yeah.
It should have been 50% off lings.
So,
I hate you all.
so halflings in before we get started, guys, before you prepped for this episode, before you knew we were doing it, how did you feel about halflings?
I've always loved halflings from always.
Why?
Hobbits.
Yeah.
And as soon as I came into D&D and started reading through the book, I was like, yes.
Didn't they used to be called hobbits at one point before they actually became affiliated and then they had to change it?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe
like pre-publishing of first edition.
Like pre-publishing nonsense.
Maybe.
So.
I'm not entirely certain. I know that the copyright reasons they can't.
Yes.
Right.
Obviously.
But Megan, how did you feel about them?
I'm actually currently playing one right now.
Are you?
So I actually really like them. I enjoy them as a people.
I absolutely love halflings, and I have no idea why I do. I gravitate toward them.
I know why I do. I relate to them. They are like my spirit people. Like I love dwarves,
not that short.
but I don't relate to not size-wise, but just we'll get into it. But everything about them I can
very
almost
good
relate
people.
to.
I have played 3 D&D characters in the last 4 years, and 2 of them have been halflings.
Charm.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But first and foremost, so you guys like halflings?
Love halflings.
What's your go-to, your initial thing is hobbits, right? That's what everybody thinks of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just merry old good positive people.
All right, so in every episode, we have to talk about the idea of using the word race,
Yes.
which is not really true and applicable. I mean, these are almost different species. And we know that with Tash's Cauldron of Everything that's coming, they're changing that now to be legacies,
Yeah.
which is
really
cool. I don't know how I feel about the mix and match of stat blocks and whatnot, because I really like what the PHP has to offer up, except for Dragonborn. That's kind of shit. That's a future episode, but
Why don't they have tails? I'm just kidding. Okay, keep on.
we are going to stick with calling it races because that's what's published, and we're going off the PHP for the most part. We hope that we don't offend anybody, but we are talking about generalities, and it's an odd conversation to have as far as context goes, especially in today's
the world
world.
we're in it right now.
So we acknowledge that we're dealing with old material. We acknowledge that Wizards is going to be publishing new material about this, and there will be an update. I'm sure 6th edition will have different phraseology, and there'll be a different lexicon for it. But for now, we're sticking with it. So bear with us, please and thank you. And now on to the regular episode. So, did you guys know that halflings don't have a home?
Correct.
They don't have a specific identity. Like, they don't have little halfling communities in and of themselves. Or if they do, they're very rare. They don't have huge writing and literature histories and libraries and whatnot.
Correct.
Honestly, halflings are the forgotten one out of the PHP. Do you guys feel that way too?
They're like the little sibling.
They don't even have an origin. Like their origin is basically a mystery. They were spoken into being, and that's their origin.
Yeah, and that's not even in 5th ed.
Yeah.
Right? So that's from previous editions.
Correct.
So I want to go through really quickly what it means to be a halfling. First and foremost, there was a homeland way, way back in the day, and it was called Luarin, and it was destroyed. You can find this info in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. So it was destroyed, but here's what it says. It's thought to be the place where their race had its genesis, and Luarin was lost during the Spell Plague to a great inundation of the sea. In the century since the Great Disaster, the waters receded, and now stories told by travelers from the south tell of halfling communities that survived as island redoubts. Which means the Spell Plague hit. Are you guys familiar with the Spell Plague?
Very minimally. I know it exists, and I know the basics of it, but I've never read deep into it.
For those at home, why don't you describe a little bit about that, Adam?
Sure. So the Spell Plague, I'm not going to get into it because it's a long, deep history of the Forgotten Realms, but here's essentially what happened. The goddess of magic, Mystra, died for, I think, the second of 3 times, or maybe it was the third one, I can't remember. But she died and took the weave with her. When that happened, there was a giant upheaval in all things magic, and there was a giant blue firestorm that swept the Forgotten Realms. As a part of this, Luarin sank beneath the ocean.
Yeah.
Now, Mystra is back. The weave is back. The Spell Plague also destroyed the Great World Tree as well, and gave us the Great Wheel cosmology that we have now for the planes, and brought the Feywild closer to the prime material plane, which we're used to playing with now. And so there was a whole bunch of shifting. This happened between, I believe it was 3.5 and 4th edition. So this is how they explained the big difference between editions, was there was a spell plague that hit.
Right.
But it's since been undone. And so that's why we say that there are some rumors of these distant halfling communities out there. We don't really get a whole lot of halfling communities because halflings are known for being able to work their way into any existing community. And they're perfectly happy to do so. And other people are happy to have them. They like to look on the bright side of things, and they like to interact with people as long as they keep, I mean, I wonder how many short jokes we're going to make. They like to keep like a low profile. So
They really like to fit in.
yeah. So let me go through it really quickly. I'm going to read out a skag first because one thing that you guys may not know is that halflings don't call themselves halflings. And the only other time that I think that we see this with the main races are with half-elves in Eberron. Because they don't call themselves half-elves, and they are not elf plus human. They are their own race of pseudo-elves, and they call themselves the Koravar from there. So here, halflings are called the Hin, H-I-N. Their language is not a secret or forgotten language. It does exist, and they've got this really long history, this oral tradition of passing things down from one generation to another, but they do not like sharing their language with other people. So while halfling is definitely a language that you can learn as a dwarf or an elf, as a dungeon master, I'm sitting there wondering why. You need to have a damn good reason in your backstory to come up with why you know halfling.
You need to have some sort of halfling that trusted you enough to
Yeah,
teach a language to you, and you won't have learned it from a written language.
No, and it's going to be more accessible than Thieves' Cant or Druidic, definitely. Definitely more accessible than Dark Speech, but you've got to have a good reason. The same way that if you speak some of the weird monster languages, you have to know why, right? So halflings have a reputation for being kind of light on their feet and super plucky.
Yes.
They are happy as a general rule. They want to stay happy, and they like to keep things very simple. They absolutely love to stay in their homestead. They want a warm hearth. They want the comforts of home. But it also talks in the Player's Handbook about how there's a second kind of almost nomadic.
I kind of want to get into this.
So there are really two kinds, and I think it comes from the fact that they're displaced. It doesn't say that directly in either book, but it's strongly hinted at that there's what they call the Lightfoot halflings and then the strong heart halflings, which are known as stout halflings in the Player's Handbook. So let's get into it, and then I want to talk about the interpretations a little bit.
Perfect.
They exhibit natural dexterity that surprises a lot of people, and they're known for being surprisingly lucky and surviving things that they probably shouldn't have just by kind of dancing out of the way. They're small targets, and they're fleet of foot. Right? There are all sorts of tales and legends about just halfling luck in general, and we see that reflected in potentially the most broken mechanic for one of the races. And we'll talk about that later as well. Beyond the typical elements of the halfling character, though, halflings can be divided into two major sub-races. They are very distinct from each other, but it seems to be a primal drive that separates them, something deep from within. Now, what's interesting is that the spell plague happened, and then it got undone, and this all happened in the last 100 years. Halflings can live up to 150. So they hit maturity at the age of 20. They can be 150 years old. So they will remember the spell plague. They will remember their home disappearing. And yet they're known for being plucky and being a part of communities and stuff. And it feels really strange that they are the happiest refugees in the world. But there are two reasons, there are two mentalities about it. The first one is the fact that they are all about home. And if they have a happy little place that they can call their own home. And you think about Hobbiton, think about the Shire, right?
Absolutely.
When you think about the Bag End and the way that Bilbo was in his little hovel, that's exactly how I feel halflings are, except even less extravagant.
Yes.
They like simplistic clothes, simplistic items. They don't flash their wealth. They like bright colors, but they're practical clothes, right? They like gardening. They like eating. They like stories. They
like the fine things in life.
It's not even the fine.
Sorry, fine's not the. They like the good things in
The
life.
simple things in life.
It's about simplicity. They really enjoy keeping it simple. We've talked about how they were a little bit like hobbits, right?
Yes.
And that was kind of where we're coming from. But there's the other kind as well, and that is the more nomadic. And this is where we start to get a little bit dicey when it comes to what's offensive. I'm going to go ahead and say it, and I apologize to everyone listening, but they seem to be almost gypsy inspired. Now, the proper term is Romani, but not a lot of people follow that. These Romani-inspired nomads almost, think of the Vistani from Curse of Strahd.
Yeah.
Right? And that is really how the Lightfoot Halflings feel. The other one is called the Strongheart Halflings, and they are these bag-end Hobbiton, move in and live here and stay where
We don't go on adventures.
Yeah.
No, they don't want to go on adventures. Their idea of an adventure is going down to the market and buying a different kind of gourd.
What a great day.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
The Lightfoot Halflings are the ones that are nomadic, that wander around, that are looking for the next adventure. They are fleet of foot. They are, well, all Halflings are fleet of foot.
Yes.
They have a reputation for being not just plucky and personable and able to live in other people's communities without a real issue, but they also have this reputation for being lucky. And we see that reflected in the mechanics, which is infuriating. We'll talk about that later. But the Lightfoot Halflings specifically are the ones that are going to be out there getting into shit.
I think it's the player's handbook that covered it really well with the Lightfoot Halflings, and the fact that they do still have they're very strongly bonded to home. It's just that their home is on the move. The home is the people that they're with and basically who they're traveling with and their companions. So it's still their home. It's still important to them. But it's not a physical place so much as it is.
Yeah, an emotional
place.
Setting. So they have really gone out of their way to, with most of the races, tell you why they are adventuring. Mm-hmm. And then give you another option of why they may not be adventuring as well, right? Like why it would be rare for this kind of sub-race to be an adventurer. Mm-hmm. So let's go through what Skag has before we move on to the player's handbook, which is where we're going to get the majority of our meat. For Lightfoot Halflings, neither the journey nor the destination matters more. The important thing is to keep moving. The life of a Lightfoot is one long exploration with each new horizon, new town, or new face a chance to find something delightful. They typically travel in small bands, adventurers groups, using whatever conveyance is convenient, but just as easily striking out on foot. Bands consist of loosely related individuals, adventuring groups, and when bands meet, membership frequently shifts. Lightfoot Halflings typically excel at tasks related to travel, be it navigation, handling pack animals, foraging, sailing, and cartwright work. Having tried their hand at all such things before or learned from other Lightfoots met during their journeys. The idea of Halflings leading oxen is hilarious to me because these guys are 3 feet tall and weigh 40 pounds.
I love it.
Yeah, I think it'd be quite the sight.
I think it's amazing, but it's unique. It is very different.
Yeah.
It's a good handle animal check.
Yeah. Lightfoot Halflings are highly social, often as curious about other people as they are about what might lie around the next bend. They characteristically possess an easygoing and open attitude, curious about others and willing to share themselves, which enables them to make friends easily. They get stereotyped as flighty, easily distracted, fickle, and unreliable, but their friendships and courtships, if brief, tend to be genuine. If you want a stable backstory and lifestyle for a character, Lightfoot Halfling is not the one you're going for. Mm-hmm. And it says as much in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. Mm-hmm. Strongheart Halflings, however, are creatures of the earth who love a warm hearth and pleasant company. They're folks of few enemies and many friends. They're sometimes referred to fondly by members of other races as the good folk. To many of them, the greatest fear is to live in a world of poor company and mean intent, where one lacks freedom and the comfort of friendship. They're really, really, really simple. And I don't mean simplistically minded, they just want a simple life. I think Mennonite, almost like the Amish lifestyle.
So you wanted to know why I liked halflings? This is why. This is my ideal.
It says, push from their nests, Strongheart Halflings typically try to have as many comforts of home with them as possible. Non-Stronghearts with the more practical bend can find Strongheart travel habits maddening, but their Lightfoot cousins typically enjoy the novelty of it, so long as the Lightfoots don't have to carry any of the baggage. So the idea is the strong hearts take their luggage with them. They're like fucking Mieka, just taking like 9 fucking suitcases. This is my baggage just for shoes, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm going to jump over to the player's handbook for just a moment and get into the idea that these guys are small and they're practical. That's the name of the first section about them. And the idea is that they are, like I said before, 3 feet tall, 40 to 45 pounds. They wear practical clothing, they use practical tools, and they do practical things with them. It's not about extravagance or showing off. Despite the fact that there are many a halfling bard, and some of us even play Rainbow Bright halflings.
Yes!
They really, traditionally, are not about showing off, and they would stand out even in a halfling community. They do like bright, flashy clothes, so that lines up for Megan, but there's a lot that...
I'm wearing all
We're
black.
not talking about her
I was
bard.
like, I'm wearing all black today,
Yeah.
so...
but there's a lot that they leave behind. They're not looking at dazzling and having big spectacles and whatnot. And if they do, it would be a unique scenario, right? Like someone 111th birthday. If you are playing a halfling, you need to keep in mind that most of them, the majority of them, are both kind and curious. And the curiosity is a major factor, especially for the Lightfoot, who are out there with their wanderlust moving around. But no matter what, they tend to be kind. They're trying to look on the brighter side of things. And it gets right into it in a little table about how they're affable and positive.
Yes.
This is one of the few times that you are actually going to get them telling you exactly how to interact with other people in the player's handbook.
I love that they include this little bit.
Yeah, I wish that they did this more often, but I do like the customizability for the races. Is it annoying?
I would say it doesn't mean that you have to play your halfling like that. You could give them a backstory that creates a different demeanor.
Yeah,
of course.
But I feel like if you're just building a character and you want to have something lighthearted and fun, I love that they added that in there.
I would take it more as a cultural. Where does the culture stand on these other interactions with other... What are we using? Races?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to stick with that just because that's the term in the books.
But in terms of the fact that playing against somebody like this could be annoying, yes. It can be playing with somebody at a table that takes it too far. Same thing as your paladin being lawful stupid. Like it just, it has that same mentality. It's just a matter of controlling your table.
It does say that they blend into the crowd, right? So
there's enough of them around. That means they're obviously not an exotic race.
Yeah, but they're big into fitting in as well. They're not rocking the boat on anything, which means that as much as they are happy and plucky, they're not, like Megan says, they're not super fucking annoying.
Yeah.
You can play an annoying character if you would like, but they're not default annoying. As a matter of fact, they got rid of the short race that is annoying in 5th edition. We don't have Kender.
Yes.
And Kender, for those of you listening who don't know, were essentially halflings that were kleptomaniacs. They just wanted to steal. They did not understand the idea of property or wealth. If they saw something they liked, they picked it up and they put it in their pocket.
It's a cool idea for an NPC, terrible idea for a PC. It's going to infuriate your party.
Yeah, it gave players the abilities to just fuck over their party.
Yeah.
That's not fun for anybody except for the person doing the...
Yeah. Get out.
So they don't have royalty. They don't really have nobility. Halflings have family elders that they go to for guidance. They may live in a place where there is a noble that rules over them, and they will acknowledge that, but they don't have nobility themselves. They don't see the purpose in it. As a matter of fact, when they have money, they're just going to lock it up in a cellar or a dungeon, and they're not going to flaunt it. You're not going to see items made of gold in their living room unless they came upon this legitimately, and this is just an heirloom and it serves a purpose. And right now,
do you think they lock it up, or do you think they share it amongst their community?
I think they lock it up. I think they absolutely do. They're not incredibly, how do I want to put this, socialist?
Yeah.
Right? That's not what they're trying to say here. What they're talking about is the idea that wealth doesn't need to be flaunted. They still want it. They'll still spend it. When it comes up, it's time to pay for a festival. We know who the rich families are, and they'll be expected to pitch in.
Yes.
Right? But they are not going to be flaunting their shit and riding on top of a camel or an elephant, Prince Ali style, through Agrabah, right? Like, that is not what you're dealing with halflings.
That'll be much more impressive, though, with a halfling.
I also just feel like I imagine these, like, halflings are the ones that when you go into, like, a courtier type of situation, they're the ones that will forget to bow because they don't understand why everybody else is bowing.
But also no one will notice because it's not like they're sticking up.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Everybody gets to just just gets down to their height for a second. They're like,
Oh, right.
all right,
That.
cool.
So while they do travel in small communities and they do work their way into other communities, they don't have their own royalty or nobility. They do have their own gods. And so I want to talk about the pantheon of halfling gods for just a second, because it gives us a couple of unique opportunities. First and foremost is the Hin mother goddess and the head of the pantheon, Yolanda, the Blessed One. She's the goddess of bounty and fertility, protector of hearth, home, and family. And that right there is pretty much what you need to know about the priorities of the halfling race, the generality, right? About how halflings feel. Your character may be different, but theirs tend to sway in this direction. Then there's her sister, Sheila Periroyal, who is the green sister of Yolanda, and she's a nature goddess, the lady of fields, streams, and the wilds found in shire and glen. She's the goddess of the weather in these places as well, and also of love, song, and dance. There are only 4 more in their entire pantheon. There's, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this properly,
Give it a shot.
You got this.
Cyrolali, who is the goddess of the hearth and hospitality, as well as trust and handicrafts. There is Brandobarus, who is a trickster god of thievery and stealth, and the patron of many halfling adventurers. There's Urugalan, who is the silent, melancholy god of the earth and death.
That's the interesting one to me that stands out a little bit differently, but when we talk about...
Yeah, well, we can get into that definitely later. He is actually incredibly sad by the duties that he has to have, although he does get a great dark hound. And the two of them are vigilant in ensuring that the dead are respected and protected. And the last one is Arvarine, who is a defender god, a watchful protector who sacrifices personal comfort for the safety of others. And I think that this is one of the call to action gods that you're going to find in the halfling pantheon there. Many halflings have also taken to regularly worship Timora, who is another one of the gods, seeing that she is a helping hand in their fortunes and a patron of luckiness associated with the Hin. So she's a goddess luck, and they call her Lady Luck.
Lady Luck, I love that.
Other than that, there are no other gods. There's no other real leadership besides the family elders or the community leaders of maybe the nomadic tribe or whoever it is in their community, that the sheriff or mayor, that don't have to be halflings for them to follow them. It's not like dwarves and elves who are weirdly xenophobic about some things.
Yeah.
They want to be run by others of their kind. Halflings don't care.
No.
They are willing to work together as a group. Now, do you guys have any thoughts about any of this before we get into the different mechanics and inspirational uses of halflings?
Well, just because when I was reading kind of the simpleness and the simple life of the halflings and thinking about their pantheons, the way I read and kind of understand halflings, it makes me feel like even if they do have a god that they worship, it would almost be like it's just a family member they're talking to, right? It's not like they're going to go to a church and bow down and that kind of stuff. Like,
as a matter of fact,
community, right?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, the shrines are within their own houses, or in like a forested glen, or literally on the side of a road. It's accessible for people, and they're not ostentatious.
They're not building big temples. They're not having massive clergymen or anything like that.
Yeah, that's not what they're about. So
I can't really see. We'll get into some strange builds later, but I can't really see a halfling cleric. I mean, you can make anything you want.
Well, I want to talk about the different classes that you may want to apply later.
Yeah,
but let's jump to a commercial really quickly, and then we'll talk about some of the mechanics. Hey guys, it's Adam, and I just wanted to give a very special thank you to Yowen's Doodles. That is spelled EEYOWENS, and then Doodles, all one word, on Instagram. She does a whole bunch of character art, and she does both traditional and digital stuff. You can check out our Instagram page to see a picture that she drew for us, a portrait of one of my favorite homebrew characters I made, which is Camion the Imp, which has tormented people across 3 campaigns. The players that I've got are all thoroughly frustrated and hate him, but he's cute. He's got a little pot belly, and he's always up to a little bit of shit. And frankly, if they had seen this drawing ahead of time, before I described him, they would be far more sympathetic to his needs and his schemes. But as it is, they all seem to just absolutely hate him. But I absolutely love the cute style that she's got going for all of these, and her art is really fun. So she is Lauren, and she is consistently pumping out D&D art and character art for people. She takes commissions, and I just wanted to give her a happy little shout out. Thank you so much for the artwork. It has been so much fun, and we are framing it and putting it up in our little studio down here. And you guys should check her out at Yowen's Doodles. Again, that is EEYOWENS Doodles. It doesn't sound at all it's spelt like, but it is fantastic work. Yowen's Doodles is definitely one of the artists on there that I personally love the style of, and it's whimsical and it's fun and it's cute, and everyone should check it out and hit her up to get some commissions. So thanks very much, Lauren at Yowen's Doodles, and we look forward to framing this and getting it up on our wall here. Now back to the episode. All right, so when it comes to halflings, there are the base stats that all halflings will get, and then there are the ones that these sub-races will get as well. All right, so let's go through the base ones first. All halflings get a dexterity score increase of 2, which fits with that.
Light on their feet.
Yeah, that idea that they are consistently lucky. I like the idea. When you apply this to dex saves, that makes a lot of sense.
A lot of sense, absolutely.
Well, they reach maturity at 20 years old, and they will live about a century and a half. That is kind of your age range for adventurers. Everybody always picks like 21, right?
Hey, 22 is my go-to.
Is that your go-to?
Yeah.
I actually like to play a little bit older, more experienced.
Dan often likes to play elderly.
He likes to go elderly. I don't like to go that far, but
I like young and naive.
I like the idea of a halfling that remembers the spell plague and the second sundering and these giant world events where the homeland was lost. And what do you do with that from there? Whereas 100 years is nothing to dwarves and elves, who will also remember this. They will see that as a blip in their middle age. Like
oh yeah, that happened at one point.
Yeah, whereas this is crippling for the halflings.
Yeah.
Most halflings are lawful good, which surprised me.
The lawful part. Good makes sense to me.
I really expected to see them more
neutral to chaotic.
Yeah, in that range, just because they're out there being plucky and happy and working with people to get things done, and they're out for the good of the community, but I guess they're not there to make waves, right? That's a big deal.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think it's because when we think lawful, we assume some kind of a code, and whereas like it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a set of rules that they follow diligently day in and day out. It's just more of a sense of I'm really not out here to hurt anyone, right?
It looks to me like the average halfling is Samwise, not Merry and Pippin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And while Merry and Pippin will get a lot of the attention for the wacky adventures, you think of the brownies from Willow as well. And there are other kind of like halfling parables. So when you start to look at these, you think chaotic, but that's not the way it is. It's everyone else that was at Bilbo's birthday party that just kind of like harumphed their way through it.
Yeah.
Right? As a rule, they're good-hearted and kind. They hate to see others in pain. They have no tolerance for oppression. It says that in a few places between the two books. They do not want oppression. They won't stand for it. That's one of the things that is going to make them take up arms, because they believe in free will and everyone is equal and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
They're also very orderly and traditional, leaning heavily on the support of their community and the comfort of their old ways.
And when it's worded that way, that's where I think the lawful starts to... You start to see the lawful.
Do you guys think that's because they don't have a homeland and they're preserving, and that's why they don't share their language either, right? It's difficult to learn. There is a halfling language. It's not secretive. It's more accessible than dark speech or thieves' cant or druidic, but they don't like to share it with people, right?
Yeah, I think they really respect their heritage and their tradition, and they kind of want to keep that to themselves because they share everything else.
Yeah.
Right? They're used to living in all their cultures. I think it's the same with anybody who, especially refugees who move to a new culture and have to adapt to the new culture. I think there's certain bits of their own home culture that they want to hold on to,
which
and
makes
pass down.
It makes perfect sense. This is why we get in the real world. This is why we get little sections of major cities like Chinatown and Little Italy, and like places like this, where there are familiar cultural touchstones for people that are moving in, that are new to this new area, to find comfort in. Right? I feel like you're going to find little halfling, little hint.
See, I was wondering if you were going to see that, because I can see that with dwarven culture and elven cultures within a metropolis, that they would have their own subcommunities. I wonder if you would have that within
I don't think
your
so.
halfling. I don't see it the same way with the halflings. I see them more blending in throughout.
I agree with that to a point, because when you think about the physical disability comparatively to others, right, where they cannot see on top of the table. Mm-hmm. You know how tall bank counters are?
Yep.
Right? And then you put someone who's
you need a step stool.
Right?
Or 3 in a trench coat.
And while you may have a bunch of that around, I do think there would be some sections of Waterdeep or Baldur's Gate, the big metropolises, that would be catered to halflings just for ease more than anything
Even
else.
that awkward 6-inch difference between them and dwarves.
Yeah.
Right? Even walking into a dwarven district, they'd probably still be that little bit under the counter.
I'm just imagining them being that tiny house in between 2 giant tall towers, just in the middle of the city. And then if you go into a tavern, there's 1 tiny table in the corner that is meant because they know that there's halflings in the area.
Yeah, I like it. Or the fact that there's normal sized bar stools, but they have ladders up the back
Up to get up to them, right?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, would you like a phone book?
A coloring book.
Yeah.
So halflings average about 3 feet tall and weigh about 40 pounds. Their size is small. I've got a question, guys. Can I hold a halfling baby in the palm of my hand like a kitten?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That is freaking adorable.
It is.
And I now want adventurers to rescue the halfling orphanage. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and they carry them around in
so terrified of breaking them.
I'm gonna flip it too. I'm gonna be like, you have to go rescue this coffin from the halfling community. And they get the coffin, and inside are 25 halfling infants. Ugh. Right, that are just hidden in the coffin from the orcs
Just
or
got
whatever,
dark.
right?
Yeah, I got dark. Oh, they're alive.
Oh, no.
Okay. I thought you went your usual Adam Dark route.
I don't kill babies. That's a Dan thing. Dan kills babies and dogs.
Dan hates dogs, though.
Your base walking speed is 25 feet.
It makes sense to me, okay?
It makes sense. It's annoying when you're playing it. It's annoying as a DM to design encounters around it.
So
but it makes sense.
I feel like the best visual I have when it comes to the fact that these guys can only travel 25 feet is when I play an MMO and I'm playing a dwarven character and they're walking beside the other character who's 7 feet tall, and to be able to make the animation make sense that they can walk at the same speed, the small character is literally trudging forward.
Yeah.
Or hoofing it, right?
Yeah.
So it's obviously they're going to go a little bit slower just because their step speed is so much smaller.
It's like walking through the mall with my mom. Jesus. Or I've worked with Dan, whose stride is 9 feet between
Those
paces.
people weird me out.
Yeah, and I take 3 times as many steps as Dan to cover the same distance, and he looks at me and he's like, oh, shall we walk up these stairs? He's taking 4 at a time.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you
You're
doing?
doing a light jog behind him.
Oh, fuck, I'm going to the elevator. Shit.
Yeah.
I'm not
I don't
doing
feel short or slow until I'm walking with Dan.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I'm going to skip Lucky for a minute. Brave, you have advantage on saving throws against being frightened.
I like that.
That's the Hobbit, right?
It is.
That's where that's from.
I also just feel like they're built to be adventurers and they're curious, which means they would have to be brave.
They've seen a lot before.
They've seen a lot. They've been through a lot. They want to see more. I feel like you have to be and have a brave mentality to be able to do those things.
Yeah, it's definitely your Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, and I think that the lucky feat supports that.
I also think that if you are less than half the height of everything else around you, you have to have a certain amount of bravery just to go out into the world and be a part of these communities.
Yeah.
You think about what a war horse, a single paladin on a war horse through a battalion of halflings.
Yeah.
That's a one-sided fight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they would still be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
They'd be hamstringing that horse fast.
Halfling nimbleness.
I love this.
You can move through the space of any creature that is of a size larger than yours.
Yeah,
I think
makes sense.
a lot of people forget about the rule that you can't move through a space when they're counting movement.
Okay, so the way that I always rule it is you can squeeze through a friendly and ally space.
Or even a threatened space.
Yeah, a threatened space, you can move
Freely within.
freely through a threatened space, but you cannot move through an enemy space.
Correct. Yeah,
Period.
through friendlies you can move. Yes,
But you have to squeeze through, and squeezing takes half of your movement.
I don't think a lot of tables play that, though, even.
You roll everything with disadvantage while you share a space. That's rules as written.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, halflings don't put up with that shit, right?
Yeah.
Even dwarves, they can move through their space.
Yes. Because dwarves are technically medium creatures.
So you like the halfling nimbleness, right?
I really do.
It's weird to me that gnomes don't get this.
Yeah.
Or goblins even.
Not as graceful?
I guess that's what it is. They say over and over about how fleet of foot and Lightfoot. One of them's called Lightfoot, right?
Yeah, I feel like my movement to them in my mind, imagine it more like dance-esque. Like they're a little bit more graceful than a goblin who's flopping their arms around, right?
I feel like they've got springs in their knees a little bit as well, right? Like
tap shoes. Yeah. Tippy taps.
Making character notes.
Yeah.
For languages, you can speak, read, and write Common and Halfling. And they say, they write very little, so they don't have a rich body of literature. Their oral tradition, however, is very strong. I really like the idea of this, and I wonder how that is going to apply to Halfling wizards.
Interesting. Picture books.
Picture books?
Oh my god. Sorry, so I also, in my mind, I was imagining a wizard, like, you mentioned Willow earlier.
Yeah.
And, like, Willow is a wizard, basically.
Yeah.
I'm now imagining him with this book, and instead of writing things down, just drawing pictures of his spells, and no one else can see what they are.
I have a real strong tendency, because they're so short, to just equate them with children. So in my head, they're writing these in crayon.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
But you can't make out what this is supposed to be. Like, you ever have like a 3-year-old that holds up the book or the page, or like, this is mommy and this is daddy. You're like, okay, that one has 6 arms.
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on here?
What is this blob over here? Oh, that's you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. That's
What a
so
compliment.
good. Yes.
So I like that there's no rich body of literature. However, I would absolutely put a halfling library in Lurin if you were ever to go there.
Yes.
To find out what's actually there, like the ancient knowledges that have been lost.
I think you can make a really interesting plot hook with a book written in halfling.
Yeah, I think so. And then have to find a halfling
to decipher it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether or not they will.
Yeah. And I think it's probably safe to assume that not every halfling can even read halfling. Do you think that's...
No, they're so strongly linked to their community and family that I'm sure that they pass down all of this information from one to another. But if you're going to be raised in, I mean, everybody is raised in an orphanage, right? So
Yeah.
when you're raised in an orphanage that's not a halfling orphanage, you may not pick up that ability. Mm-hmm. So it depends on your background, I guess. Every halfling, or almost every halfling, speaks Common because they want to be able to converse and talk with the people around them and be a part of the community that they're in. I think it makes sense myself. I don't like how languages are done in 5th ed. If you had a halfling in an elvish community, would you just give them Elven?
Yes.
100%.
I feel like it's written in them that they want to blend. So why would they not take the time to learn the language?
Yeah, and I think that should be strongly implied or mentioned in the book. But
Yeah.
As a DM, I would have ruled it that way regardless.
So I guess my point is talk to your DM if you want more languages, if it makes sense with your backstory.
Yeah.
So there are 2 main kinds of halflings, Lightfoot and Stout. And unlike the other racial the subrace backgrounds, these ones are really just 2 different kinds of families as opposed to different subraces. The difference between a mountain dwarf and a hill dwarf is very clear.
Yes.
High elf to wood elf is very clear.
different.
The different kinds of humans even were very, very apparent.
Yeah.
That's not the case with halflings. They are just almost distant cousins. So we're going to go through these 2 as well as the Ghostwise halfling option that is in Sword Coast Adventures Guide. Let's grab our dice and roll for initiative.
Before we do,
Oh, here comes Megan.
would you like to cover Lucky?
I was really going to leave it out and talk about it at the very end.
Okay.
But no, let's go over it now. We might as well.
We don't have to.
No.
This is your episode, man. You do you. I just didn't want you to miss nothing.
No, we'll get into it because everybody buckle up. Every halfling gets this. When you roll a 1 on the d20 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, and that includes death saves,
Yes.
you can re-roll the die and you must use the new roll. Mm-hmm. Which means you cannot critically fail.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
How do you feel about that?
You can roll another 1.
You have a 1 in 400 chance as opposed to everyone else. That is ridiculous.
I've done it.
I'm sure everyone has a story of that one time that they've done it.
Yeah.
But how do you guys feel about this?
I think it blends with the type of character that it is very well. Because the fact that these guys are supposed to be super brave, they're the tiny little people that are wandering around, pulling levers, doing dumb stuff because they're curious. It's almost like they have to have this unnatural trait to be slightly lucky just to survive.
Yeah. I find it super flavorful. I can understand from a game balance perspective how it throws things out of whack, but I actually love it.
I have never seen anyone, including myself, at any one of my tables, play a halfling without specifically hunting this trait down to min-max.
I 100% did that in a one-shot.
You haven't done that at one of my tables.
Not at one of your tables, no.
All right, look, I'm going to talk about min-maxing for half a second here. There's nothing wrong with min-maxing.
No, people like to play that way. Let them play.
If you want to be a power gamer, that's fine. Just make sure everyone else at your table is on board with you doing that. They don't need to do it as well, as long as they know that we've got this one superhero in our midst. The problem is when people start to become munchkins, which is a type of min-maxing. And a munchkin is someone who is so fucking good at everything that they are impossible to defeat at anything. See some of Dan's characters. He builds them to be mechanically perfect. And that's fine. That's a puzzle. It's a great thing to do.
It's the way you like to play the game.
If that's how you want to do it, that's great. But putting a munchkin in a group of role players fucks the world up. This ability here, by the time you start to put some of these, you bounce back up when you hit 0 hit points and shit on top of it, where it's so hard to kill players in the first place, and now you're going to give them death ward and contingency, and you're never going to be able to get rid of this halfling. This halfling is immortal now, right? And they're not going to miss. You think about this. This is for ability checks, and this is for saving throws. I don't care about the attacks. Reroll on one's fine.
Yeah.
Those two, that hurts. Mm-hmm. From a DM perspective, that bugs the shit out of me. I like it for the halfling itself.
Yeah.
When it's removed, when it's in its own little bubble, makes perfect sense. I agree with you guys. It's great, it's flavorful, it's fun.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
When you stack it up against half-orcs and humans and gnomes and Aarakocra, and everybody's got their strengths, and you can argue about how broken some of them may be, or not maybe, this is the most infuriating thing I've seen.
Now, would you maybe consider reflavoring this instead of re-rolling when you roll a 1? You just automatically, you can't roll just a 1, you get a bonus on ones of +5 or something.
No, because like I say, the people that have picked a halfling have picked it because of this trait.
Right, but I'm thinking the power of it is the fact that you can go from rolling a 1 to rolling a 20, right? What if rather than just being unable to completely critically fail,
but that's
you're not necessarily going to succeed?
But that's what makes it lucky, is that you can go from being a complete total failure to someone to be this amazing thing. That's the flavor.
The other thing too is that you can go from rolling a 1 to a 3.
Yes.
Right? Which is why if you have just a bonus die or a bonus whatever, you're gonna lose that ability. If you're adding to it, then you will never, ever, ever roll a 1.
Right.
Because you'll always be adding to that
Correct.
single. So what I do whenever I see halfling, and some people hate this, but this is my ruling. Whenever I see a halfling at the table, I pull out my crit tables, and I say, here are crit tables. If you roll a 1, you can re-roll it and take that, but you still take the negative from the crit failure.
Don't tell that to Dan, because I'm playing a halfling in his game.
Oh, Dan knows that fully well.
So if you roll a 1, you can still succeed at the thing, but then
there's still going to be some sort of penalty.
Yeah, it's the idea that you have your bow and arrow, and you shoot, and you're aiming for the guy way down the battlefield. You still trip and fall, but your arrow still hits.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and my crit tables are not deadly. They're not super deadly until the players start to fight each other and then start getting criticals, and then Megan loses.
I was going to say, didn't my leg get shot off because of one of your crit tables? Yeah.
But that wasn't me, that was Dan.
I also did slaughter a bunch of children, so.
In a church.
I did.
Yeah, so.
As a paladin.
As a lawful good paladin. Yeah.
Sounds about right. That sounds like an Adam game.
Yeah.
There was possession involved, which is what we're not saying here. But Dan needed to take out the threat, and so he shot Megan and rolled a crit and pulled out the crit table, and then took Megan out at the knee with a crossbow bolt.
Excellent.
Lopped off a limb.
Good times.
Not the first time that has happened in one of my games, that we've lost a limb. So, but anyway, the idea as well would be that you would be rolling on the crit fail table, even though you
rolled your 1, take the consequence. Yeah.
I was worried you were going to make this into a long or short rest ability.
No, look, again, I believe in rewarding the players for making the choices that they make during character creation. There is a reason you chose to be a Dragonborn. I'm not going to say you can't use your breath weapon.
Yeah.
There's a reason that you wanted to be able to fly or breathe underwater or whatever it is. So I'm not going to build a campaign where you never get to do that. I look at it like this. when you choose to be a ranger and you have your favorite terrain and your natural explorer and your favorite enemy and all that shit, and you build it up this way, there's an expectation that you will be using these things if you get them at first level and they're a part of your character. Yeah. If you never get to use them, then you're at a great disservice.
And your DM is a dick.
Yeah. If I've got one player in the party who doesn't have dark vision, then darkness becomes a major issue because everybody else chose it and they need to be rewarded for it.
Yes.
Otherwise, what's the point of getting it? And my problem in general with the ASMR versus the Divine Soul Sorcerer, right? You have celestial blood in you, both ways.
Yes.
Right? Because the Divine Soul Sorcerer exists, the ASMR is less special now. Mm-hmm. I want the characters around the table to be special. And I'm fine with them both existing until there's one of each at the same table. Right. And now they're stepping on each other's toes. And I run into a lot of this problem with the Mastermind and the Inquisitive Rogues because they're just good at fucking everything. Right? A lot of bards are just good at everything.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, and when you do that, you are going to step on the toes of other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's different than the Paladin just buffing you with an aura.
Yeah, he's helping the other player.
Sure, yeah, and I'm all for that. The Paladin should be helping others, but they're not doing things better than you are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the wizard is able to hold that beam up above their head so everyone can sneak underneath it, and the barbarian can't, it feels lopsided. Yeah. If it's a one-off, cool, something special happened. You know, that's the rolls.
Yeah.
But when it's every single time, that's too much. And that's kind of my problem with Lucky is it gives you the opportunity to be a superhero way more often than everyone else. When you start playing with inspiration dice and guidance and other things as well, those
numbers can get crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of dice manipulation. Reroll this and on a 1 reroll that. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that in 5th ed. I don't like that it comes just
baked into the class.
Yeah, well, baked into a base race rather that you would get at first level.
Yeah.
So it just seems a bit much to me. Especially when you're going to get like a plus 13 to rolls later on in the campaign. You don't need this. I can roll a 1 and still hit later on in the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, your halfling bards and your halfling rogues are just going to get some crazy numbers.
Yeah. So that's my rant, which I was going to save to the end. But we got it early. Let's grab our dice and let's roll to see who's going to talk about their sub-race first. I was at a 4. I got bumped to a 14.
I got a 12.
7.
You're cocked, Megan. Do you want to re-roll it?
Yeah, I do.
If you roll a 1, you can re-roll it.
20.
Not 20. There we go. All right, Megan, you're up first. Which one do you have?
I have Lightfoot.
Yay, okay.
Gordon.
Yeah.
No, not... goddamn.
What?
Gordon Lightfoot.
Are you in Canadian?
I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't actually know who that is.
He's a Canadian singer.
No.
Oh, see, I don't know people's popular human beings' names.
That's okay. I'm now struggling to come up with one of his hits for you.
Take that,
We'll
sir.
cut this part of the podcast.
How dare you? All right, so we did talk about Lightfoot a little bit earlier, kind of in the general sense, but I think we all get the feel that they are the ones that suffer the most from their wanderlust, so they're the ones that travel the world, kind of go around, try and find and implement themselves into a new community, and they do love to blend in, and they basically to fit in wherever they're going. I kind of imagine them as like the kid brother that you hand the controller to that is playing Luigi but not actually playing Luigi. Like
the one that's not plugged in.
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of how I imagine them in comparison to the other, like, more stout version of their cousin and brethren. But yeah, I love the idea of them that they do like to find community, but just not with their own kind. They like to explore, they like to learn. All those pieces kind of tie in together, and I feel like their ability score supports that, so they do get a +1 to their charisma. I feel like that's needed in my mind, and like when you're thinking about their background, they need to be able to communicate with other humans in a positive way, so that they can learn and adjust and adapt to wherever they are. Right? And then they, of course, are naturally stealthy, so you can basically attempt to hide even when you are obscured only by a creature that is at least one size larger than you, so you can basically hide behind your older brother.
Which is like almost everything is one size larger.
Exactly, right? Like you can hide behind a barrel of hay if you feel like it. Right?
Yeah.
So I do love these guys. This is actually really enough the one that I usually pick the most out of all of them. Just because I do like the flavor of them, and I do tend to usually pick more characters that are charisma score based builds.
You said that you were playing essentially Rainbow Bright.
I am
the
playing,
halfling.
yeah.
What class?
So she is a Lightfoot bard.
That makes sense, though, with the charisma and the dex. Yeah.
And so she is basically built as a support character. And that's,
What's her name? You gonna give her a shout out?
What is Sora?
Sora.
Yeah.
God damn it, Megan. In the last campaign, her name was Cora. So like,
seriously?
Yeah.
Wait, no, sorry. The halfling that I built for Dan's campaign is Sora.
Okay.
The one that I built for the other campaign is Kara.
You are not breaking the mold.
Wow,
in any of this
you
shit.
really stretched yourself thin.
Yeah, so...
We're going to run out of them soon.
Well,
We're going to run out of consonants.
We're going to have Kira will be on that side, and then Dora on the next.
Well, that's why I was mad.
Dora will be the explorer.
When Casey took Accra. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You took my letters,
Yeah.
and you just made a different name.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we kind of touched on it earlier, but Lightfoot really they're the adventuring type. So if you're going to make an adventurer, and I mean, charisma is such a well-used stat across so many.
It's one of my gripes is that charisma is so popular for class creation.
Yes.
Right? That, and I don't know. I don't like how everything is charisma based in 5th edition. It is it is never the dump stat unless you're a barbarian.
I do like it just for the balance of... I remember playing a game of 3.5 way back when I was younger, and I played a game of 4th at one point in my life, and a couple of other role-playing based games that aren't charisma stat heavy.
Yeah.
And I struggled, because they were my first time playing role-playing games. I didn't really understand the concept of role-playing and actually having a conversation with someone to get an end result. So I found that when I played 5th and started playing a little bit more, having a charisma stat that actually worked and did something and helped those that didn't know how to have meaningful conversations on a whim, I felt it helped support that.
I love it for the skills factor.
Yeah.
And for halflings, that makes a lot of sense because they tend to go in that direction. Bards and rogues, generally. However, I hate it as a casting ability.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
we've had this conversation a
casting
few
up their
times.
charisma?
Yeah.
everything casts with charisma, and I'm annoyed with it.
It's because you have to have a good, whimsy whenever you're casting your spells.
What's interesting about this is that the halfling traits, the base ones that you get, there's a shit ton of them, and you only really get 2 new things for each one of the sub-races.
Well, that feeds into how similar they are, right?
Yeah,
We're talking
I was
about them
about
being
to
cousins.
say, yeah. When you get to the idea that they're all very closely related, this is how.
Yeah.
And I like that. It's unique and it's different, but is it enough, do you think? Flavorfully from one to the next?
I think so, because it adds a sense of customization to it. Because we kind of talked about how at the very beginning, when you're building a halfling, they are very structured in their ways. They're lawful good. They're these.
Yeah.
So you're kind of structured when you're starting a halfling build. So the fact that they're very broad-ended to say, hey, you either travel or you make a home, but everything else is pretty much up to you, I think it helps still have that creative aspect behind it, even though you've built a character that's very structured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it as well, just because you're right, it is broad at the very end of it. You know when you're building a drow, you know what you're building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
And it's the same for the majority of the other sub-races. Humans, of course, don't count. Dragonborn as well don't count. But for everything else, you know what you're getting into when you pick the sub-race. This one feels like it's just a different... It's the seasoning on top of the meal, right?
You're just picking which stat you
Yeah.
want to look at.
Well, I really like the secondary abilities.
Yes.
So I rolled for second.
You were
but
next, yep.
I'm going to hold my action because I want to talk about the differences
Yeah,
between the two.
fair
So-
enough.
Yeah.
So I've got Stout. So we're going to go into this. So Stouts, we discussed earlier, they're kind of called the strong hearts, and the abilities that they get really play off of that. You think strong heart, they get a constitution bonus. Makes sense.
So it goes up by 1.
It goes up by 1.
A little bit beefier, a little bit meatier.
Yeah. Yeah, they spend a lot of time sitting around the house. They're a little stockier.
They've done at least 3 push-ups in their lifetime.
That's right. We're good.
Well, I feel as well like they're going to be working around the homestead. They've got their
Yes.
vegetable garden. The stout halflings will have raised a barn. The Lightfoots
absolutely.
are walking from village to village, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that they would be...
Yeah, no, I think it's very flavorful and very accurate to what the stouts are. And then the next one they get is Stout Resilience, and this is where I think the flavor really comes out. You have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance against poison damage. I like this a lot, but if I'm going to roll a Stout Halfling, I'm going to just roll a Dwarf.
Yeah, you think so?
I think I would rather roll a Dwarf than a Stout Halfling.
You don't think that the poison resistance is useful?
Oh, poison resistance can be useful, for sure, but it's situational. I
And
don't think you're going to get... I mean, naturally stealthy... Both of them are pretty situational, right? The light...
I think
But I feel-
if you're comparing the two, I feel like being naturally stealthy is a hell of a lot better than
I
just
think so
being
too. And I think, and
poisoned.
nice thing is you can use that on your whim and when you decide to use it. I feel like there's a good chance Stout Resilience isn't going to come up off enough. You're going to forget it at the bottom of your character sheet.
Yeah, but the thing is, you are going to get better hit points. you are good. And you already have a better chance of fending against poison as well.
Because your constitution
because
is
your
higher.
constitution, right? Like,
absolutely.
do you think that this is a factor because they drink?
Yes.
Right? Like,
I'm
picture
thinking-
halflings in taverns,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. You could call them Guinness halflings, right?
Yeah, right. So, but do you think that that's where this poison resistance comes from?
I was picturing it more, you're talking about raising barns. They're dealing with rat poisons, maybe they're dealing with fungicides, things like that. They're going to come across
Plants and pesticides,
exactly.
the foragers.
Yeah, they're probably going to get bit by we've had this discussion about poison versus
they're
venom,
going to accidentally eat a magic mushroom once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Accidentally.
Yeah.
Just lick a toad, because what else do you do on the weekends?
Yeah. I am now.
Well, they're naturally curious. No, I don't dislike Stout Resilience. I think it definitely has its place. I mean, resistance to poison can come in handy so many times. Constitution is a stat you never should dump.
Would you almost give, because I feel like what they're playing off of, what we're talking about, is just that they have a knowledge of the world around them because they deal with plants and food and all that kind of stuff all the time. Would you almost say that they advantage on identifying what a poison is?
So like that's going to depend on their class.
Yeah, more class.
So the race is what you just kind of naturally get from your culture, but the class is going to be your level of education.
True enough.
Right? So I think that you're going to look to your rangers and your druids to know that more so than whether or not you're just an average halfling, a halfling commoner.
I do now imagine just like, because when we first started talking about the Stout one, we were talking about like more like stocky, more like muscular because they're working on a farm.
Yeah.
I just want a group of fat halflings.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Just fat. Just these portly, just roly-poly, good, lovely little dudes. Just drinking beer all day. Beer bellies galore. Like, that image is delightful to me.
Halfling scholars that sit around the tavern.
Yes.
I like it.
They should start a podcast.
I like the idea of them being a bunch of like philosophers sitting around in town square, just drinking like fermented milk and getting drunk off of it, like fermented goat's milk, and sitting there just. Do you guys know the legend of and then they start to talk. I was thinking about that the other day, and they just are polling people walking by. What about their opinion?
Just like the strangers in the square.
Yeah.
Not even know this house. I was picturing like the old guys sitting in the park.
Well, I think there's a certain amount of that, but I also think that they're going to straight up talk to people, and because they're so sociable, I see them doing that. And either one, Lightfoot or Stout, I could picture them doing that, right?
Absolutely.
Hilarious.
How do you guys feel? Is that enough of a difference between nomadic, like one side really loves home, the other side really loves to walk? Is that enough of a cultural difference to warrant the sub races? Or would you have split it somewhere else down the middle?
I kind of like it, because I like it as the idea. I'm thinking of it as if you had two brothers. One is going to do one thing, the other one is going to do the other. That's kind of how I imagine it.
Yeah, I think, and that's where your problem comes, is not necessarily, they shouldn't be considered sub-races. They're more subcultures, if that makes sense.
Well, and that's the argument that everyone is making right now in the D&D world, right? There's a difference between a sub-race, a subspecies, a subculture, the different legacies and bloodlines.
I think other races do a better job of making that divide line clear because it's regional based. Halflings aren't regional based; they're cultural based.
Yeah, and we're going to see that actually with the third one for Ghostwise halflings. Now, Ghostwise halflings trace their ancestry back to a war among halfling tribes that sent their ancestors into flight from Lurin. Ghostwise halflings are the rarest of the hidden, found only in the Chundlewood and a few other isolated forests, clustered in a tight-knit clan. Many Ghostwise clans select a natural landmark as the center of their territory, and members carry a piece of that landmark with them at all times. Clan warriors known as night gliders bond with and ride giant owls as mounts.
That is cool.
Because these folks are clannish and mistrustful of outsiders, Ghostwise halfling adventurers are rare. It says that you need to ask your DM if you can play one.
Yeah.
They get a bonus to wisdom score instead of charisma or constitution.
I like that.
And they get silent speech, which means that they can telepathically speak to any creature within 30 feet as long as you share a language with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can only talk to one person at a time. So you can't blast it out. This is not halfling radio.
An announcement. Yeah.
So, how do you feel about this compared to the other two?
I don't know that I would want to use this as a player character. I think you can make some really cool NPCs with them. I would have put this sub-race into the DM's handbook, much like the Oathbreaker Paladin, in that sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Eladrin were in there as well,
yes.
right? It's just being like weird and a little unwieldy to use. Mm-hmm. Megan, how do you feel about this?
I like the fact that they added it in the sense where you've got a charisma-based one, you've got a constitution-based one. It's nice to have a wisdom-based one, so you're covering all your bases for the different classes that you can play.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a good add. Flavor-wise, I kind of agree with Brad in the sense where it's not something I think I would play, but it would be interesting to come across one, right? So especially because of the rarity that they are, I just think that should be played upon. So it doesn't feel like a playable character in my mind. But again, I would like to see one in a game somewhere.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I don't know how I feel about them getting telepathy.
Yeah.
That's the one that it's just weird to me. I'm fine with the wisdom boost.
There's a lot of ways to get that telepathy, though.
Yeah,
through classes, through spells.
But it's nice to have it built in. It's just weird that it's built in.
And that's the part that, again, leads me towards a DM character. Because you could really mess with the party by just having this voice appear in their head.
I really wish that this was a Underdark halfling, which would make the telepathy feel a little bit better. And I mean, I know we have Darrow, which is technically supposed to be the darker side of the coin for halflings.
Yes. Yeah.
But Darrow are literally insane magicians.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen a proper Underdark halfling with this telepathy because, I don't know, Mind Flayer, bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Aberration, something.
I see the telepathy as coming from the fact that they had to be kind of secretive. They hid away a culture that really doesn't communicate vocally very often. Mm-hmm. I see the whole culture almost as they only speak telepathically unless they can help it. They're secretive, they're hidden. What better way to stay, hidden and out of sight than to not have to speak vocally and being able to direct your voice mentally at one target.
I'm now imagine them just having a super raspy voice because they never use it. So like if they come across someone that they can't speak to, like,
yeah. What's up?
What's up, guys?
Those owl companions sound badass, though.
That is pretty cool, but it's just like a weird flavor. Like I don't.
It is which feels like it leads towards a DMPC, not a player character.
Yeah, like when I'm sitting there saying, all right, everybody's level 3. Yes, you can all get a mount. One person shows up with a donkey. The gnome shows up with a riding dog. And then someone shows up with a fucking owl. And I'm like, all right, okay, calm down. You stick to the land.
But
terrestrial
I want a
beings.
turtle.
Did you know that they get dinosaurs in Eberron to ride?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I'm more excited about that. Now, we will talk about Eberron halflings when we do episodes that are breaking down specifically the dragon marks. If you want to jump into that, go listen to our Touring the Multiverse series, where we do get into that shit and do a proper breakdown. But we will do one on our regular podcast as well, getting into the sub-races from Eberron. Mm-hmm. But before we jump out to a shout-out, I'm going to list out all the classes. I want you guys to tell me which one fits, which one of the sub-races fits best, flavor-wise.
Per class?
Per class. So okay. I'm going to go through them. I want to know what you guys think, or if it doesn't fit at all.
Okay.
If you would never make one of these.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
Deal.
Artificer.
Yes.
That would be, to me, a stout.
Why?
I like the constitution bonus, and I like the resistance to poison, especially if you're going to play the alchemist.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I have no argument with that. That's where I would go as well with that.
It's kind of like an alchemist type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Barbarian?
Barbarian, I wouldn't... I want to get into this later. We're going to talk about some character builds, but I have a hard time, because they're so happy-go-lucky, in putting in rage into these creatures. It could be done, but I would want... If I was a DM and somebody told me they want to play a halfling barbarian, I'd say you better have a damn tragic backstory to build that much rage into a halfling.
Or they just stub their thumb and have like this weird innate ability that they just get mad every once in a while.
Do we have a subclass?
But they would be stout. You want the constitution
because the
bonus.
cons?
Yeah.
Okay, what about Bard?
Bard is 100% Lightfoot.
Yeah, makes sense. You get the
charisma.
You
need the charisma.
Right, but also I like the
Ghostwise.
The flavor of it,
yeah,
too.
the flavor.
But the flavor with the Lightfoot.
They travel, they like stories, blah, blah, blah.
Cleric?
Then you would definitely go Ghostwise for the wisdom.
Yeah, but wisdom aside, I'm talking flavor only. Right?
Flavor only, then you're going Lightfoot again.
Probably.
Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to go Stout, because the cleric's staying at home. They're the ones running. Although we kind of talked about how you aren't going to have big temples to halfling deities.
Yeah.
But maybe this is the one guy who kind of maintains the little shrine.
Do you think cleric makes sense? Are you going to
I
see?
just wouldn't make it.
No,
I just
not-
wouldn't make a halfling cleric.
No, it's not really a preferable.
Druid.
Druid would be a Lightfoot.
I'm going to say Ghostwise.
I was gonna say, I
Ghostwise?
would agree
Yeah,
with
okay.
Ghostwise.
Okay.
Animals.
Spore druid.
Yeah.
On a bird, it makes sense to me.
I mean, the wisdom casting aside, I
Yes.
just like they're out in the woods. They
Mm-hmm.
can speak telepathically with it lines up for
it
me.
yells druid to me.
Yeah. Fighter.
Fighter would have to be stout.
Stout.
You want that constitution
Or I would also do Lightfoot, just
for the charisma and the ability to hide.
yeah.
As a fighter, a
the
sneaky
hiding.
little fighter
A
jumping out.
sneaky
and-
fighter. Yeah.
You know what? If I was to make a fighter as a halfling, archery would be their weapon of choice, not up in your face.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dexterity bonus, right? Feeds right into that. It'd be a dex-based fighter.
Monk.
Monk would be a Lightfoot,
Lightfoot.
and I do. Well,
I could see them go either way on that, right? Because you can see them meditating by themselves in their own little house with their own simplistic.
Building their own little shrine type thing.
Yeah, I could go monk for any one of the three.
They can make their own dojo.
Yeah,
I can't see myself being a halfling monk though.
interesting because I'm going to come back. I'm going to circle back to that. Paladins.
Paladins?
Lightfoot.
I don't see them being paladins.
I do.
I very
And I will
much.
get into it.
Yeah, I very much can see them being warriors going out for. They have gods. They've got a pantheon. I can see them kind of leaning into that, and also having strong morals.
I mean, being lawful good.
Yeah,
or-
and remember, they hate oppression, so they would go on.
They
these
would fight
quests.
for it.
Yeah,
Well, I can see them. I just wouldn't make one.
Ranger.
Ranger would have to be
Lightfoot.
Lightfoot or
And I would
Ghostwise.
make one.
I like a Ghostwise for maybe a Horizon Walker or
One of the Xanathars.
one of the Xanathar ones for sure. Your base Ranger, I would go Lightfoot, but Xanathars, I'd go Ghostwise.
What about Rogue?
Rogue
I mean,
is-
this is the standard classic. This is what you go
Yeah,
for.
this is your Lightfoot.
Doesn't matter which one you get.
No.
I'm cool. Like your resistance to
three.
poisons
Yeah,
and the
it's
con
fantastic.
makes sense for some rogues.
Yeah.
The
Charisma for your face rogue.
and the ability to hide. The
Yeah.
Ghostwise makes sense for being able to be a disembodied voice and having wisdom for your high perception and shit like it.
Yeah, it
Fits with all.
any of the three.
And the halfling rogue just makes sense.
Yes.
Right.
And plus 2
the
dexterity.
trope.
There it is.
Yeah.
Right there.
Classic.
Thief, though. I would go Thief subclass.
Oh, not necessarily.
It doesn't have to be, but I mean, you look at tradition. If you're going Hobbit, you're going Thief.
The assassin.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You
The
can play
assassin that can't roll a 1. Mm-hmm. Sorcerer.
Sorcerer. Absolutely would go Lightfoot. The charisma.
I don't know. I like the idea of the Ghostwise, though.
I like the Ghostwise as well. I would go Lightfoot just simply because I like it from a flavor perspective. Their homeworld was destroyed by the spell plague, which was just raw, like untethered magic. Mm-hmm. So the idea that there would be a wild magic sorcerer halfling or a group of them makes a lot of sense. to
Yeah.
me.
We're gonna go deeper into this later. Don't you worry.
All right. Warlock.
Warlock. I love the idea of a halfling warlock. First off, but again, charisma caster. You're gonna go Lightfoot.
Yeah, but from a flavor perspective, I can see it.
Ghostwise.
Ghostwise. I can also see it for Stout, though. The
yeah,
idea that
absolutely.
they're at home and they've
They
got.
have a study. They have all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
And then last but not least is Wizard.
I just like, okay, I just love the imagery of a halfling on a bird. And like, just the Ghostwise just sits in my brain, just caw. It's like, so just being able to wield magic on the back of a bird
Yeah.
is just the flavor for that.
I'm gonna say Stout because Constitution modifier when you're trying to make a concentration check
Yeah.
is helpful. Poisons again, you can work that into backstory. What they've done, work in a lab, they've concocted things.
Sure. I don't see it honestly fitting for any of them.
I really wouldn't.
I
play
wouldn't
one.
build one.
I wouldn't
no.
play one. No.
No.
I would test it out for a one shot. I would say a diviner
either.
with the telepathy of the Ghostwise might fit a little bit.
If you're doing division or divination wizard, where you're already manipulating dice and you have lucky on top of that.
Exactly. So I can.
If you really want to piss off your DM, if he's been a dick lately, you make a halfling divination
Gonna write
wizard.
this down for one of Adam's campaigns.
Oh, bring it! There are cows that fall from the sky. I'm telling you. So let's take a second, jump into a shout out before we get into our own interesting builds.
Before we wrap up, I just want to remind everyone that you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and at r/itsamimic on Reddit. You can always reach out to us through our email at info@itsamimic.com because we love hearing from you guys, and any questions that you send us will get added to the list for upcoming mailbag episodes.
Cool. So let us roll some more dice. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about our unique builds for this. And I feel like we've all got more than one idea.
Yes.
I
Sitting
had
around the-
so many.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right, let's roll dice. We'll just keep going around the table till we run out of shit. Oh, and I missed. I got a 17.
I've got an 18. Oh, yeah, it got bumped to a 4. I had an 18. It got bumped.
Yeah.
Yay. All right, I'm going to go first, and I'm going to start off with Brad's favorite thing in the whole world, which is Charm. My halfling
Oh, I knew it was coming.
Charm. Charm, his last name is Dimeshore because he would walk up and say, "Hi, I'm Charm Dimeshore."
It gets better.
Stop it.
This is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, and he had 17 siblings. Each one of them had another name that would build with the last name Dimeshore, including the dead one whose first name was Rada, which was Rotted Dimeshore.
I'm sure.
So
Stop it.
yeah, so
The list is out there.
yeah, Charm was a Gloomstalker,
I love and hate Charm.
which was a ranger. He also got a level of warlock, and he had a level into assassin as well. So he was multifaceted, and he was a Lightfoot. I used it because I wanted the charisma for the warlock, but his big thing was he was fast because he had Zephyr Strike as a ranger, and he would strike really, really hard for the first couple of rounds. And then he's relying on his hunter mark, and he's staying way, way, way back out of range. Having the ability to dash and disengage and hide as a bonus action is always useful, especially for someone who's ranged. And the ability to be invisible in the darkness, even to things with dark vision, was nuts. Charm was plucky and happy at face value, and was also possessed by an evil gauntlet that was controlling his mind, had him turn on the rest of the party, and he straight up murdered half of the 7-person
Just
party.
over half, yeah.
Yeah, so he straight
4 out
up,
of 7.
as well as kidnapped the beloved NPC and disappeared to go off to be big bad evil guy later on.
Yeah, he killed my favorite character that I've ever made.
Yes, so like
I love Charm.
unceremoniously just straight up fucking
Oh yeah,
murdered.
it wasn't glorious in battle or anything. It was...
I think you were murdered in your sleep.
No, you
fantastic.
dropped fire on me.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I burned you to death.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Charm was a load of fun to play from a mechanical standpoint because he hit really hard early on, and he was able to hit multiple targets
Yeah.
and become invisible. And I love the idea of him being able to hide as a bonus action, even when he was just beside someone else who was a medium creature. I could get into their space and just disappear between their legs and no one could see me. Bonus points if it's in the dark.
Yeah.
Right? And so all I had to do is run around, even with the 25-foot movement. It didn't hurt me that badly with the Zephyr Strike, which is one of the spells that's in Xanathar's. I had so much fun, and he was definitely someone that I would recommend that build for.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he was an unorthodox character, and in retrospect, had I played him without getting possessed, like there was DM interference.
Yeah, there was a lot of shenanigans, shall we say, to bring that up. Like,
Yeah, Dan really poked me behind the scenes to get me to get levels of Warlock and shit that I didn't want, and I had to make saves all the time and that kind of shit. But otherwise, if I wanted to continue that way, I probably would have made a Ghostwise halfling. Mm-hmm. Just because Ghostwise and Gloomstalker, they're just...
match made in heaven.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So that was a lot of fun. Let me tell you, as a halfling, collecting potions made a lot of sense thematically, and nobody looked twice.
No, nobody questioned it.
Which is why when I'm starting to throw Alchemist Fire and drink potions of invisibility, I did not even have to use my class abilities. I was just quaffing potions left, right, and center.
Pretty cool.
And it was a lot of fun to play Charm.
I like it.
Dan gave him a lot of Alchemist Fire, and it killed a lot.
No, I only had two. I only had 2 vials. I killed Dan
At level 3.
Yeah, but I killed Dan's big bad evil guy, like his tier 1, like captain that we had to kill. I just dropped a vial of Alchemist Fire on him, and he died.
1 shot.
How did Dan not learn to not give you fire objects?
Dan had not DM'd me in many, many years, and he had forgotten. And he said, this won't be bad, especially because everyone else was getting little +1 items and shit. I was just taking stuff in the background. He was like, oh, there's also a vial of Alchemist Fire. And I'm just quietly, well, if no one else can use it, I'll take it. At one point, I had a teddy bear that was full of Alchemist Fire as well, and I set up a trap, which was part of my ability to kill the rest of the party. I spent an entire round just loading this into the teddy bear, and no one else knew it except Dan. And then I set the teddy bear down right at the mouth of a trap at a door that they needed to use strength to open, and I turned around and walked away. They used the strength, it tipped the bear, it blew up, 2 people died.
Yeah, I love it.
I feel like I am allowed to be creative with items and weapons and traps and just ridiculous things because of how pragmatic the halfling is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing that with a, let's say, Goliath or a tiefling. I'll rely on other things to get that done, right? So,
True enough.
So who was next? That was...
I did roll an because I bumped
You
yours
did. You
before.
did. You
so.
did. I saw.
All right, so let's talk about the paladin.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm thinking here. So along the sense of what we already spoke to, in the sense that not necessarily will they be going and trudging forth for their god. It would be more of a sense that they have a purpose of someone's being oppressed somewhere, and they just decide that this is their devotion to stop this from occurring.
Yeah.
And then they get strength from their god to make this happen. So the reason why I kind of wanted to dig into this a little bit more was because I recently watched Deadpool 2, and Domino, the character that is extremely lucky, I wanted to play off that, but also made everybody else around them very lucky. So as a paladin, you have auras that make things a lot easier for everybody else around you. So somehow, with you being in their presence...
You were just warping the space-time continuum around you.
Exactly. Making things easier. And if you take Oath of the Ancients, you also get the aura of warding, which gives them resistance to damage from spells. So not only are they able to get bonuses on their saves from being a natural paladin in your presence, but now you're also giving them the resistance to the spells that are being fired at them. So people will just feel like, and you would just say it, you wouldn't tell them that's what's happening because you're there. It would just be, they would think that you were a lucky person to be around. And people would want to be around you because you just provide that safe space.
I also like that this stacks nicely with the brave feature.
Yes.
Right? So that there you have advantage on not being frightened.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun for...
Right?
Yeah. Even though mechanically it is not perfect. A lot of people are going to look at that and say, I want a Dragonborn for Paladin.
Yeah.
Right? Or I want something strength-based or whatnot. But I really, really like that. Also, you can use finesse weapons as a Paladin.
You absolutely can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that dex is not completely wasted.
No.
And when you put dex on top of all of your stupid freaking...
Or, sorry, on your AC too, right?
Well, depending on your armor, yeah. But when you put it on top of your fucking saves, right, it starts to get nuts. Because a lot of the time, I can't hit a paladin, so I'll throw areas of effects out.
Yeah.
And most of those are dexterity-based, right?
Yeah.
So...
I'm also imagining you being in battle with another barbarian beside you, and you, like, the paladin and the barbarian are fighting the big bad evil guy, and then you just kind of step into his space and hide.
Yeah.
So that you don't necessarily get hit. So you don't have to stack your AC, because you can protect yourself in certain ways.
You just have to, assuming that they don't move, but if you're both up against the big bad evil guy, you're not disengaging and running. Yeah. You're the meat shields, right? So... He's benefiting from your aura.
Yeah.
You are hiding behind him. And you don't even need to leave the square to attack.
Yeah.
You just cannot be targeted.
Exactly.
Love it.
That's pretty good.
I think it's a lot of fun.
Now, are you going Lightfoot, Stout, or Ghostwise?
It would be Lightfoot.
Lightfoot.
Yeah.
Well, the charisma for the paladin.
For the paladin.
Yeah,
I feel like it's needed. And again, the sense that I wanted the ability just to hide when you're in battle. I thought that was adorable. Just this tiny thing covered in like heavy armor, and you just step behind a rock.
Yeah.
You can't see me.
Yeah.
All right, Brad, what do you got?
All right. I have a character that I played with Dan in one shot called Theobald Wildersong. And he was a wild magic sorcerer, which we talked about the spell plague. That's kind of where that came from. But his wild magic, I had it flavored as it came through a song. So he had the inheritor background, and he had this song that he inherited from the family that's passed down for generations. And when he sings the song, magic happens. And he can't control necessarily what it is, right?
Yeah.
Wild mage sorcerer, right? So he can kind of at least get it. He's learned it with certain intonations. He can make certain things happen, but sometimes it just goes wrong or it just goes right.
So he was, you said he was a bard?
No. Wild magic sorcerer.
Right, yeah. But he got it through song.
But he got it through song. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If it was to go further, he was a Lightfoot, right? For the charisma bonus. And again, the ability to hide was really cool. Mm-hmm. But I really like the idea of just this easygoing halfling has a song from the family, and when he sings it, things happen.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of
fun. I like
fun.
it because it does play on the sense that they do have like an ownership of their history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they could even sing it in their language and no one can understand it.
Yes.
Right?
And I did intend, it it was a level 1 shot, so I didn't get to do much with it, but I definitely saw myself bringing it down to Bard at some point as well. It was going to be a multi-class.
Bards in general with like halflings is dope.
Especially with an Eloquence, with the new Eloquence Bard that's come out.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be such a wonderful multi-class.
Can I go?
Yeah,
on my next
go
one?
ahead.
All right, so my next one is my other character that I played, which was Grisp. Now, Megan and Dan actually met Grisp. He was a pirate. Mm-hmm. And I played him in a campaign for about 3 sessions, and I loved him. He was a barbarian pirate. And the idea with Grisp was that he absolutely loved drink.
Yeah.
He was bitter about his homeworld about his homeland disappearing, and he was out there trying to find a new group of people to be with. But because he was lawful good, and he ended up with pirates, thinking these guys, they're out there for adventure. He was Lightfoot because I wanted him to be able to hide. He was really enjoying playing and working with these guys until all of a sudden they were murdering people. Mm-hmm. So he lit the ship on fire while it was floating and swam away, and they were out to hunt him down. Yeah, that was his backstory. So he was landlocked as a pirate,
right?
Way deep into the heart of the homebrew world, like in the continent. Mm-hmm. But his favorite thing to do was to throw javelins because he was dex-based,
right?
And I did
love a good javelin.
Yeah. And he was good at intimidation. That's why I wanted the charisma as well. So that was his main thing that he could do. But playing a halfling barbarian was a shit ton of fun. When he wasn't throwing javelins, he had 2 hand axes.
Okay.
And he was just kneecapping people. And it was so good. And I was really specific. I'm never going for the kill. Always the amputation. When they hit 0 hit points and I want them to die, I just want to cut their leg off.
Huh.
You can knock them out. You can have them die from blood loss.
Whatever.
But I cannot reach their heart or brain or throat.
Right.
So I'm taking
just
them out
swinging
the
low.
knees. Yeah. When you really piss me off, I'm going about a foot higher.
Yeah.
And yeah. He was so much fun to play. And he was climbing things all the time because the decks, right?
Absolutely.
So up you go. I'm going to climb 6 feet up in the air, which means I'm just 3 feet above everyone else.
Yeah.
And then I'm tossing javelins.
I was going to say, jump in with 2 axes too? Or?
No, there was just a lot of fun and flavor for Grisp. And big mutton chops too, because Halfling was a lot of fun. But he was big leather duster on this tiny little Halfling, just swagger and attitude. You guys met him and he was part of the crew. And only Dan really interacted with him. But he was friends with Borgin the cannibal dwarf and Crom the womanizing, disgusting human chef, and then Grisp was the pirate that was just out there to fuck up someone's day. Super protective, loved his new family on this new ship when he was with you guys, and he was an inn actually for you guys to find a druid, which was Charlie's character, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But
I'm going to jump on that just real quick because I had a character that was pretty much very much the same. Basically, I want to see a halfling version of Gibbs from Pirates of the Caribbean.
he was really similar to that, except easily enraged and...
Yeah, so definitely more easygoing, which is the halfling style, but it's like the ship quartermaster. It's more of an NPC. I wouldn't have it as a PC, but...
No, he was a lot of fun being a halfling
the
barbarian.
thick mutton chops, the pirates. So that was one of my notes, the exact same idea.
Cool. Megan, what's your next one?
I also was also kind of a barbarian.
Oh, yeah?
But it was more in the sense of using the totem of the warrior, so more of the animalistic side of things, because we were talking about why would a barbarian want to, like a halfling rage, right? Mm-hmm. They're naturally good-hearted creatures, right? So I was thinking, well, maybe they just got tuned to a specific animal that had a raging ability, so sometimes it's not necessarily of their own fruition, it's just the fact that a bear is who they commonly, and they stub their toe.
A honey badger, and then it's going nuts. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, or just like an otter, and they just get really upset and flap around a little bit, right? So I just really thought it was really cute, and I would have gone with the ghost whatever.
Ghostwise,
yeah. And then it would have a bird as its friend, not necessarily its mount, but it would just be like, hey man, what's up? Like very nature-esque, very of the world, very calm. So they do have that calm nature to them.
Yeah.
But then when they get into a battle and something happens, I feel like this is the character, we've talked about this before, almost list out the reasons why your character would get triggered by something. Mm-hmm. And if they don't get triggered by it, it is just a regular fight. But if one of your 10 or 5 triggers occurs in that battle, like your friend gets hurt, or they attack first, or those things fall into place, then the animalistic nature takes forward and this tiny little halfling turns into giant bear, right?
I would have every one of those things be a phrase that you say, like, hey, I wasn't done talking yet, and the rage kicks in.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got your catchphrases for that.
That's my best friend.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Brad, do you have another one?
Yeah, really simple. Just a halfling fighter, part of the town guard, likes to keep the homeland safe, and all of a sudden, an invading force comes in, wipes out the town, and he's just out for revenge. He's an archer up on the wall. Right, I'm gonna still go with the Lightfoot halfling.
Yeah.
I want to be able to use the bow, maybe even an arcane archer, something like along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for a halfling, right, family is everything.
Yeah.
And as soon as you lose that home,
Yeah.
you're gonna want that revenge. You're gonna be seeking to.
Yeah. And I feel like
Avenge.
that speaks to what we talked to at the very beginning, was the sense that just because they are good-hearted, good-natured people, doesn't mean bad things haven't happened to them, that they would want to rectify, fix, or adjust, or have a mission and sense where it does make them a little insane to people sometimes.
And honestly, I mean, I'm going to speak to every 14-year-old that listens to this podcast. You really shouldn't. You think about that happy-go-lucky family, but you've got that trauma and how, like, weird it is to you feel distanced and whatnot. And every 14-year-old out there that puts on eyeliner, but their parents are, like, happy, church-going, friendly, and they're like, no, my life is dark and evil. Right? Everyone's
Personally
emo face. So, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. It also makes it so that you are feeling that level of, what's the word I'm looking for? The distance between you and everyone else. You're alienated.
Absolutely.
Because you're not as happy.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one. You said you didn't like them for monks.
Yeah.
In Sword Coast Adventures Guide, I'm going to read this verbatim. The Hin Fist. A halfling monastic order from Lurin, adherents of the Hin Fist turn their people's natural confidence into a spiritual path for mastering themselves and their potential. A few Hin Fist masters have established monasteries in lands outside of Lurin, where the teachings available only to halflings have been opened to students of other races who are willing to follow the path laid out by Yolanda. Hin Fist monks generally follow the way of the open hand, as described in the monastic tradition class featured in the player's handbook. So there is your reason for it. If you take your dex, and I would say your Ghostwise, so you get your wisdom for your key points, and they're very wisdom based, right? So between those two and your ability to be a little telepathic,
Would you have your Ghostwise be part of that monastic tradition, though?
I would, from this flavor, from this point, I think that I would. I like the idea of them being a little bit charismatic, but I don't see the point of it. Con is really important as well, but then the resistance to poison feels.
Well, I understand statistically. I'm talking
like from a flavor
perspective. How do you justify, an alienated part of the race?
Well, all you have to do is have their clan be gone, right? Or have them go out into the world away from their clan and then join the nearest halfling community, which happens to be a monastery. Right. And so they've gained some... But monks get all of those bonuses to speed. So suddenly your 25 feet doesn't matter anymore.
You're just super fast.
Yeah, super fast little halfling.
Yeah.
I can totally see monk. I think the reason I wouldn't do monk for halflings is because I just don't like monks. And that's a personal thing. I know that they're great and they're powerful. It's just one that's never...
You just don't like monks, huh?
Monks is... Yeah, the monk as a class has never grabbed me.
The problem with monks in general, and this isn't a monk episode, but we've talked about this on the other monk episodes. The problem with monks is that they are so narrowly defined. A monk is a monk, despite the different classes or the different subclasses. There are differences. That's not always true. Think outside the box.
Yeah.
Anything from a race to a background is going to change your flavor. But when you have something like clerics, which can be one of a million things, or bards, or rogues, or wizards, and then monks, you know what you're getting into with
punch.
Pretty much, right?
I just finished watching Cobra Kai, so...
Did you like it?
I loved it.
Everybody I know loves it. I just don't care.
Ugh.
I haven't started it, but I just don't care.
Like, you just have to get past, like, the first episode of, like, cringe because of the character that
you ready for this?
as an adult.
I've never watched Karate Kid.
Neither is my partner.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a few years older, though, and that's...
I just kind of... I missed that boat.
Yeah.
Oh,
There's some things that you don't catch the first time round, and so you just don't get around.
The nostalgia's not there.
What about the Three Little Ninjas?
I remember it existed.
Rocky.
Three Ninjas. What was Tum Tum?
Tum Tum. Yeah.
And was it? I want to say Shadow, but no, that was
That was Homeward Bound.
That was Homeward Bound.
Stop it.
Very similar.
Anyways. It makes me want to build a monk because I just finished watching Cobra Kai. So,
Megan, do you have another build?
I don't. No, I'm tapped out.
We've already touched on it, but the divination wizard.
Yeah,
it's just when you put lucky in there, you put dice manipulation. It makes sense thematically for one, and two, just the math.
Just make Willow the character.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, you're going to be a little bit of a munchkin, and I almost, as a DM, want you to start rolling some of these things while other people are playing, right? Just because your turn can take forever.
Oh, for sure. You need to be on top of it. You need to be prepared.
You need to know what you're getting
ready,
into.
and you need to know what you want to do ahead of time.
Yeah. So I really like that. The only thing that I really like that we haven't touched on, it's funny that none of us really made a rogue.
Yeah,
well, it's too classic.
Yeah. So it's not an unusual build.
Yeah.
But the Ghostwise Druid makes a lot of sense.
Ghostwise Druid makes a lot of sense.
I wrote that one down.
We're gonna touch on one though that in a bit. I think that makes even more sense for a druid.
Okay. Cool. So let's wrap this episode up then. In case you guys have any final thoughts.
I just really love halflings. I feel like they're just underplayed, in my opinion.
I find that they're undersupported in Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you get a lot of flavor. Even in the modules, you get some NPCs, but there's not a lot.
I mean, I'm guilty as anybody for using them as the tavern keeps, and,
that's what they tend to be used for, right?
Because it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Easy to talk to. Your PCs can get info out of them.
If you're the kind of person who wants to meet new people, learn about other cultures, what better job than a tavern keep in a town that adventures pass through?
Yeah, my big thing is I like using them as fat mayors.
Yeah.
Fat halflings.
I can see
It's
that.
my favorite thing in the world now.
So the idea of the fat mayor and he's the mayor from Jaws. We have a festival opening. I know it's dangerous, but we're going to open the beaches anyway because everybody needs to have a good time because it's a harvest festival. Like, he's just the kind of dumb mayor from Jaws. I love using halflings for that, especially because they're not building massive temples. City Hall is not huge. They're not doing shrines to gods or having giant colossus-type statues. Their village can be rich, but all they do is spend that money on weatherproofing for winter and feasts.
Feasts and festivals.
Yeah, and that's it. It's simplistic and it's straightforward, and it's almost, we are preserving our way of life, and that means that farmer over there who had a really bad year is used to this quality of living. Everybody else who had a good year help them out, right? And so they are preserving their traditions as much as possible, but I really like them as fat mayors, and I like them in places of power and positions of like the Halfling Prince. I just confused some Harry Potter fans. The Halfling Prince.
I was like, Terry would be very confused right now.
Is a lot of fun because you just, I'm a prince. I'm not a prince here, but I'm a prince.
I'm a prince.
And it's all good. And yeah, I've got money. But why? Do you need some?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and just kind of laid back and easygoing until you get to the weirdly xenophobic, Ghostwise. And they're almost like elves hiding in the woods, right?
Yeah.
So I very much see them as elves. I really love the halfling chef as well.
Yeah.
Is the other one that I really like.
More fat halflings.
More fat halflings, but I just... They should have a penchant for cooking. It just makes sense with the nature of...
I like halfling bards now. Now I want to see a troupe of traveling clowns.
Absolutely.
Where you
clowns.
Specifically clowns, where you have the carriage roll up and it's a covered wagon, and then like 400 of halflings come rolling out the back of it.
I hate everything that you just described.
And they make they're like a human pyramid of halflings, and it's like 55 halflings, but only goes up like 2 stories.
I hate that I didn't see that coming.
I don't like it.
Wait, do you not like clowns?
I hate clowns.
Did I know this?
At one point, maybe.
Okay.
I don't talk about it often because then people always tend to show you clowns.
Yeah. Oh, really? Even this one, and then they show you a picture
that's
on the phone.
Hands down, the first thing that happens whenever you say it.
Yeah. So no, that's fair enough. I just like the idea of a bunch of like halfling hobo level clowns, right? Like the hobo clowns, but they're halflings all running around with fake stubble painted on.
See, I was seeing more of a touring acrobatic troupe.
Yeah, I could see like Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
But it's like they're just
only. You know, it's not as impressive because they're only 8 feet off the ground. But
it's like the flea circus. Oh, sorry. Is that mean?
So I want to see more halflings as NPCs. Halflings. I also want to see little halfling villages, and I don't know. I want more out of that for 5th edition, and we're not getting enough of that. No. Although they are really present in Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate and these.
But again, they're your shop owners. They're your right?
They're simplistic. They're not heroes.
No.
Right? Which is why I love Bilbo, who is, I mean, not a traditional halfling. He's a hobbit, but the idea that he went out and adventured and everyone else thinks he's weird because he did it.
Yeah. Well, it's not like, because the halfling bard that I made in the Strahd campaign, she has no idea that they're trying to kill Strahd. All she knows is she's traveling around with these people and her job is to make people happy. Like, that is her job. And she just, like, banded herself with these folks because they're...
She's got to be frustrated in Barovia then.
There's been times. But like, you know, like, it's just... I like that aspect of them, is that they're just... They know what they love, they know what they like, and they stick to it, right? Mm-hmm. So...
Cool.
All right, so that is it for this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, you can head to www.itsamimic.com and hit our fancy donate button, or tell your friends and the rest of your D&D party about this podcast. We're available on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as most podcast apps. And don't forget to come on back for next week when we're covering the wizards.
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 And it's the evil wizards, too, so that'll be fun.
Oh, who gets to cover that episode?
I think that's me and Dan, and I want to say, I don't know. It's me and Dan.
It might be
a fly on the wall.
Know. I'll have to look at it.
You've reached the end of another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. Connect with us at itsamimic.com. Don't forget to subscribe and hit those share buttons. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
All right, so I know that we're done doing the regular halflings for Forgotten Realms, and I know that we said that we would cover the 2 halfling dragon marks for Eberron in a future episode. There's really nowhere for us to cover the one that's in Exandria. Are you guys familiar with Critical Role?
I am. I'm not going to go so far as to identify myself with the critters because they are intense, but I've listened to a good chunk of the podcast.
I've watched half an hour of one episode.
I have been forced in a car to listen to some episodes, but like in the middle of, and most of me listening to it is someone else explaining what's happening over top of it.
My biggest issue with it is just how much time you have to invest.
That's the thing. It's like,
you basically need to be part of the campaign.
Yeah, it's like if I wanted to go back and start watching Dragon Ball from the very beginning.
Okay, well, I do that once a year.
or hey, I'm going to go do a Doctor Who run through. Like, where do you start?
Never seen Doctor Who.
Oh, it's fantastic, but it's an undertaking.
You have
got to get into it.
Invest.
If you're not already a Star Trek fan, where do you start, and how many series are you going to watch? Right? Like
Next Generation.
There are some large fandoms out there, and Critical Roles is one of them.
And honestly, I think it's a fantastic podcast. I just can't invest the way that
it makes me jealous when I do listen or hear anything. So I'm just like, I wish I could do voices the way that they do.
Yeah, and Dan is our local one, so you guys are going to have to bear with me. I'm going to read it right out of the Wildmount book.
All right.
The Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. They have a unique kind of halfling.
They do.
So bear with me on this. I'm going to read it verbatim, and then I want to hear a unique build from each of us, okay?
All right.
Nearly every race in Exandria has an origin myth or two. The stories vary from realm to realm, but it's clear that Corellon the Archheart, who is the elven god, wove the elves from grass, Moradin the Allhammer carved the dwarves from earth, and so on. Halflings across Wildmount have no such stories, and no faiths to tell of their god creating the small folk. Some speculate that Avandra the Changebringer placed halflings in the world, but despite some of Ioun's most devout priests petitioning their god to reveal the truth of the halfling's creation, the knowing mentor has remained infuriatingly coy on the topic. We're talking about a lot of gods that I know nothing about.
Yeah.
It's its own pantheon, its own world.
For their part, halflings of the Dwendalian Empire and the Menagerie Coast don't much care where they came from. All they know is that they walked out of a hole in the ground one day to find a beautiful world spread out before them. Some longed to explore the world's farthest horizons, while others were content to gaze upon the beauty of the same sunrise each morning. Plenty of halflings have joined the Cobalt Soul over the years in desperate search of answers to the world's biggest question: where do we come from and where are we going?
Where'd you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
Pretty much. But most halflings are content to leave the questions of past and future well enough alone, simply living in the present. That really does seem to line up with the two kinds that are in the players.
Halflings in general.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, halflings of the Dwendalian Empire, generations ago, the halflings of the Felder clan established a settlement now known as Felderwin Tillage, and discovered in time that they had inadvertently created an agricultural powerhouse. The word halfling has been synonymous with simple, rural lifestyle ever since. The dutiful, orderly people of the Dwendalian Empire most often think of halflings as carefree country bumpkins. In a nation obsessed with its heritage and its legacy, the stereotypical halfling philosophy of living life in the moment is viewed as pathetically unambitious. Interesting take.
Pathetically unambitious. And not just unambitious.
Halflings of the Menagerie Coast. People in this part of the world have no real assumptions about halflings. Most perceive them on a level with humans, having similar ambitions, virtues, and vices. The only difference is that halflings are a wee bit smaller from prow to stern and a fair bit bigger from port to starboard. I know nothing about this, but it's a coast and it sounds
Just water and stuff.
shippish.
Yeah.
Halflings are common enough on the Clovis Concord that just about every vessel, shop, tavern, coffeehouse, and brothel has been designed with halflings and gnomes in mind. Stairs often have shallow steps for small legs. Stools feature hand cranks to adjust their height up and down, and most restaurants have utensils sized for small hands. I
love that.
Very nice. Very cute.
Damn it, Dan. Halflings in Jorhas. I don't know if I'm saying
Jorhas.
Jorhas. Few Jorhasians have ever seen a halfling except for the occasional halfling soldier in Dwendalian armor. Because of this, most Kryn citizens view halflings as icons of the Empire and are quick to distrust them. Only the Lotusden halflings, a reclusive and insular clan native to Lotusden Greenwood, call Jorhas home. So that's our locals and our gods. So you get there's a little bit of a different flavor, but
It's very massive worlds.
Yeah, it's very much still in the flavor of what we were given in the player's handbook.
Yeah.
So here's what we get. We get the Lotusden halfling. Long tied to the natural heart of the Lotusden Greenwood, these halflings have adapted to live synergistically with the chaotic laws of the wilds. Your wisdom score increases by 1, and you get something called Child of the Wood, where you get some spells. You know Druid Craft is a cantrip. When you reach 3rd level, you can cast the Entangle spell once with this trait, and regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest only. And when you reach 5th level, you can cast the Spike Growth spell once with this trait, and regain the ability when you finish a long rest as well. Casting these spells with this trait doesn't require material components. Wisdom is your base spellcasting ability. You also get Timberwalk. Ability checks to track you have disadvantage, and you can move across difficult terrain made of non-magical plants and undergrowth without expending extra movement. How do we feel about this? Let's roll dice really quick.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm last again.
I got a 19. Yay, I'm awesome. All right, so I like Wisdom for this. They seem to be another insular clan like the Ghostwise. I like it's a little bit different. They're far more druidic, which is a lot of fun. But there are two different kinds of druid. There's happy, hippie-go-lucky, and then there's the dark Celtic druids of Stonehenge with, ash and soot painted on their faces. And the second one feels Ghostwise. These guys feels like the hippies to me with the druid craft and the entangle and the more traditional druid. I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't like Timberwalk. I think it's too much.
You think, too much?
Yeah, just give it to Rangers. It feels like a class, not a racial thing, especially because Timberwalk is all about plant growth and entanglement, but there's nothing stopping it from being applicable in the Arctic or in an urban setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean...
But, there's also spells that do pretty much almost the same thing. So if you were to take this and do something like a druid or like an earth domain, anything in the world, you could take the spells that can do something similar.
Yeah, so it feels unnecessary on one hand if you're already going that direction from a flavor standpoint.
Which, if you're making one of these characters, you're making one of three things, right? You're making a druid, you're making a ranger, or you're making a nature domain cleric.
Oh, you can make
There's some other options, but
you can make a barbarian pretty easily with this. You could
Oath of the Ancients Paladin.
So there are some options in there, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of the Timberwalk. I like the rest of it well enough.
Yeah.
Who is next?
Me. I don't mind it. I think that if we're, again, it strikes me the same as the Ghostwise one did, where it's so specific where the other ones are so very broad in
Yeah.
the sense where I am either a traveler or I am at home, but you can choose what that looks like for your character. This is very specific in the sense where if you pick this character, you've kind of built what your backstory
You know where
is.
you're from.
You know where you're from. You know what's happening. You know what your rules and rights are. You know what
Yeah.
you're doing, right? So this is more of the, if you're going to build a character that you didn't want to have too much creative freedom with, I feel like this is one you would do. Or, to our point earlier, more of a DM use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it as if you were going to be building, you wanted to play a halfling druid, this is a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to play that halfling ranger, this seems reasonable.
Yeah, Ranger
I mean,
would fit.
if you had something that already kind of had this nature bent to it, and you want to play a nature halfling,
Especially with wisdom.
yeah.
Do you guys, would you let somebody port this over from Exandria into Forgotten Realms
No.
or anything else?
I don't see any reason to. If you're playing in Exandria, use it, but I don't think that it's a niche that needs to be filled.
No, because you could just build a halfling, a Lightfoot halfling, to do what this thing does, basically.
Well, that's the Druidcraft spell, and it's those couple spells that you can have some fun with them, but I don't see the need for it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a big fan of do what you want to do. I would let...
Yeah.
I'm going to let dragon marks into my Forgotten Realms, and I would let this in, no problem.
If someone
but-
specifically came to me with it, sure, but I'm not going to be building NPCs in my Forgotten Realms world that are from...
Well, if I'm willing to let the gravity or time-based wizard
Yeah.
come in,
Sure.
right? Or some of the other things from... like they've got some unique builds on orcs and things. I have no problem with this. I don't like tying spells to racial abilities as a general rule. Mm-hmm. But these are such an afterthought. These spells are nothing.
Yeah.
Right? It's a cantrip, which is a very flavorful but relatively weak cantrip. It's a level 1 spell.
I think
which,
that's what I like for races, though. I want, if you're going to give them a spell, give them something that's flavorful, but not...
Yeah, but I mean,
powerful.
and that's my point is I like the fact that they're weaker. Entangle is important, sure, but you're not going to have the modifier to cast this to make it a super crazy save against it unless you're leaning into that druid shit anyway.
Yeah.
So you would already have
already
it.
have
So
access
I don't
to the spell.
care.
Yeah.
Right? So you might as well have it. So
You're going to use it to trip your partner.
yeah. But that's it. So I don't know. I like the Lotusden. I think it's a lot of fun. I have no problem including them as the
An option.
option maybe that's on Lurin. If you were to go there like for a plot hook and you find this unique kind of halfling there.
Yeah.
Interesting. I see Lurin. I would play it with an Atlantis bend.
Yeah, that's cool, but I like the idea that it has come up out of the water and there are just kind of wild halflings around, right? And that's what this feels like. Wild magical halflings because the spell plague hit them. Right? So that's why they have spells and they're mysterious because they do have timber walk. And
Sure.
So that's kind of where I would come from with that. So
I don't see a harm in it, but I also don't have a draw to it or a desire.
I'm not looking for it.
No.
Not excited about it.
No.
Yeah.
But I mean, ask your DM.
Yeah, sure. There's no harm in it. And as a DM, if a player asked me, I'd say, yeah, go for it.
This is not game breaking.
No.
Like some of the other things that have come up in the later books. So
Or luck.
or the luck, yeah. So
Love it.
great.
All right.
Okay, bye.